Have you ever wondered if the government once tried to create something terrifyingly close to zombies? This is not Hollywood fiction. This is the true story of MKULTRA, one of the darkest projects in American history. Between the 1950s and the 1970s, the CIA secretly carried out experiments across hospitals, universities, military bases, and psychiatric wards. Officially, the program was designed to study mind control, to find ways of breaking prisoners, extracting secrets, and manipulating behavior. But in the shadows, something darker seemed to be unfolding. The Cold War created a storm of paranoia. The United States feared the Soviets, and the Soviets feared America. Both sides dreamed of super soldiers, human weapons who could fight without fear, without hesitation, without pain. The CIA began to wonder if human beings could be stripped of free will entirely, turned into blank shells that followed orders without question. Subjects were chosen from society's most vulnerable. Some were psychiatric patients who had no one to protect them. Others were prison inmates lured with false promises of reduced sentences. In many cases, unsuspecting civilians were drugged without their knowledge, in bars, hospitals, even on the street. They became test material for a program that saw them as nothing more than tools. They were injected with high doses of LSD, sedatives, and unknown chemicals. They were locked in rooms for days, blindfolded, exposed to endless sounds, lights, and isolation. Electroshock was pushed far beyond medical limits. Hypnosis was used to break their will. The result was often the same. People lost their sense of self. They became hollow. One female subject, after weeks of treatment, no longer spoke on her own. She sat motionless, staring at walls for hours. But when a doctor whispered an instruction, she obeyed instantly. She would stand up, eat, or walk across the room as if controlled by invisible strings. Another subject, a young man, was described as catatonic, yet responsive. He could not think or speak independently, but when told to move, he did so automatically, like a puppet. Declassified documents used the phrase vegetative state, but some of the staff had another name, whispered in private: the living dead. Not all cases ended in silence. Some experiments produced violent, terrifying results. Drug combinations and sensory torture sometimes created people who lost all reason but not their strength. According to rumors, several subjects attacked staff, biting and clawing with animal-like fury. These incidents never appeared in the official records, but stories of bloodied nurses and panicked guards leaked through whispers from inside. By the early 1970s, the project began to collapse. Journalists uncovered fragments of truth, and survivors started to speak out. In 1973, the CIA destroyed thousands of MKUltra documents in one massive purge. Why destroy evidence if the program was harmless? Its secrets were so dangerous that they had to be erased forever. The fragments that survived paint a disturbing picture. Families reported loved ones returning from hospitals completely changed. A husband who no longer recognized his wife, a mother who forgot her children's names. Survivors who wandered like ghosts, empty, obedient, stripped of identity. They were alive, but something human was missing. This image haunted people for decades. It resembled the earliest legends of zombies, not the flesh-eating monsters of movies, but the blank-eyed slaves of Haitian folklore. Bodies without souls, existing between life and death. Officially, MKUltra was shut down. The government insisted the experiments were a failure, that nothing useful was gained. But many believe the most disturbing files were hidden, not destroyed. Perhaps the experiments continued under new names in deeper secrecy, far from public eyes. So here is the terrifying thought. Maybe the zombie apocalypse will not come from a virus or a supernatural curse. Maybe it already happened, inside laboratories where ordinary men and women were reduced to living puppets. And if they could do it in the past, what is stopping them from doing it again today? What if the most terrifying zombie legends weren't born in movies, but inside secret laboratories of the Soviet Union, hidden behind barbed wire and iron doors? Experiments with rabies and other deadly viruses may have created something horrifyingly close to the Walking Dead. During the height of the Cold War, Both the United States and the Soviet Union pushed science into the darkest corners. While the West experimented with mind control, the Soviets turned their attention to biology. Soviet scientists believed that viruses could be weaponized not just to kill, but to transform human behavior. One virus became their obsession: rabies. Rabies is one of the oldest and most terrifying diseases known to mankind. When a human becomes infected, the virus attacks the brain. Victims experience extreme agitation, hallucinations, uncontrollable aggression, and in the final stages, an instinct to bite. It is, in every way, nature's closest version of a zombie infection. Once symptoms appear, death is almost certain. In the 1930s, Soviet laboratories began studying rabies as a possible biological weapon. Official documents admit research into rabies strains, but conspiracy theories suggest far more. According to whispers from former doctors and declassified reports, Soviet scientists attempted to alter the virus, to combine rabies with other pathogens, to make it spread faster, act quicker, and resist treatment. The goal was chilling, a disease that could turn enemies into violent, mindless husks within hours. One story comes from a former military technician who later fled the USSR. He described a secret institute in Siberia where dogs were infected with experimental rabies strains. Unlike normal rabies, these animals didn't just foam at the mouth. They attacked cages, slammed their bodies against steel bars, and continued moving long after suffering injuries that should have killed them. Soldiers tasked with handling the experiments described the animals as possessed. But the experiments didn't stop with animals. According to several unverified testimonies, human prisoners, political dissidents, criminals, or those who simply disappeared from the streets were exposed to mutated strains. Some accounts describe patients who began trembling violently within hours, then descended into uncontrollable rage. Guards claimed they tried to bite, spit, and claw at anyone who approached. Others became eerily vacant, their eyes glassy, their movements mechanical, as if stripped of identity. Official Soviet reports never mention these cases. Instead, when outbreaks of unknown illnesses occurred near military towns, they were quietly covered up. Villages were quarantined, and families were told their loved ones had died of pneumonia or fever. Yet rumors spread among locals. Strange screams from hospitals at night, bodies removed in sealed trucks, entire wards emptied without explanation. One particularly chilling account comes from the late 1950s in a closed city near the Ural Mountains. Workers reported that an experimental rabies strain escaped containment. Several soldiers were infected. According to surviving family members, the soldiers were buried quickly and quietly, their coffins sealed. But whispers claim that before their deaths, the men behaved with terrifying violence, thrashing, growling, even biting through leather restraints. Could these stories be exaggerated, born from Cold War paranoia? Perhaps. But rabies itself provides a frighteningly real foundation. Doctors know the virus drives victims into fits of aggression. They know it compels the infected to bite. Soviet scientists truly tried to accelerate or weaponize it. The result might have resembled the earliest stages of a zombie outbreak. Western intelligence agencies took these possibilities seriously. Declassified CIA reports from the 1960s mention concerns about Soviet biological programs, including rabies and encephalitis. The documents are vague, but the fear is clear. If the Soviets succeeded, they could unleash chaos unlike anything seen before. Today, some researchers argue that Soviet rabies experiments helped inspire later zombie fiction. The idea of a fast-acting virus that spreads through bites mirrors both ancient folklore and modern horror. And while no official evidence proves human experimentation, too many whispers exist to ignore completely. Standing guard outside a Soviet laboratory in the dead of night. You hear muffled screams, the sound of fists pounding metal doors, and voices shouting in panic, then silence. Hours later, trucks leave the compound, covered and locked, their cargo never explained. Would you believe you had just witnessed the birth of a legend, or the cover-up of something worse? In the end, the Soviet Union collapsed, and many of its secrets were buried with it. But scattered documents and survivor stories suggest that something unnatural was indeed attempted behind closed doors. Rabies alone is terrifying enough. In its natural form, it already resembles a zombie curse. If anyone truly tried to accelerate its effects, humanity may have come far closer to a real zombie plague than we want to admit. So the question remains, did the Soviets come close to creating their own army of the undead? Or were these experiments nothing more than shadows of paranoia? The truth may still be hidden in dusty archives, waiting to be revealed. And perhaps the most disturbing thought of all is this. If they attempted it once, who is to say someone, somewhere, isn't still trying today? What if an accident in a secret American laboratory once brought the world to the edge of a real zombie outbreak, buried under reports of a fire and erased from official history? The Hutchinson incident of 1967 remains one of the darkest Cold War mysteries. In the late 1960s, Hutchinson, Kansas, was an unremarkable city, surrounded by farmland and military installations. On the surface, it looked ordinary. But according to former workers and leaked documents, one facility housed research that was anything but ordinary. The U.S. Army was experimenting with biological agents designed to disable enemies without conventional warfare. Some believed they were trying to create a virus that would strip away reason and turn people into uncontrollable, violent beings. The Cold War was at its peak. The United States feared the Soviet Union's advances in bioweapons, and the Soviets feared the same in return. Behind closed doors, scientists tested pathogens capable of altering the human brain. Rabies, encephalitis, and experimental neurotoxins were studied. The stated goal was to weaken enemy troops. But whispers suggest a darker aim, creating soldiers who felt no fear, no hesitation. Human weapons fueled only by rage. In 1967, something went terribly wrong. Officially, a fire broke out in one of the labs. Several staff members were reported dead. But witnesses tell a very different story. One former guard later claimed the fire was a cover for an outbreak. According to his account, a vial containing an experimental pathogen was accidentally released. The virus spread rapidly among researchers inside. Those infected did not collapse from sickness. Instead, they changed. Guards recalled employees staggering through hallways with blank eyes, their movements stiff and unnatural. Others were consumed with violence, attacking coworkers with shocking aggression. One scientist was seen biting a fellow researcher so hard that bones snapped. Security forces struggled to contain the chaos. Restraints failed. Bullets had to be used. Neighbors living near the facility remembered strange details that didn't match a normal fire. Trucks arrived in the night, carrying sealed containers. Smoke rose from incinerators, but there were no flames visible from the supposed blaze. Families of the dead were given vague explanations, told only that their loved ones had perished in an accident and that the bodies could not be recovered. No funerals were permitted. Some surviving technicians later whispered that the infected could not be buried in ordinary graves. Their bodies were destroyed completely, burned in sealed chambers. One rumor claimed that at least 3 victims continued twitching and moving long after being shot. By morning, the story had changed. Newspapers briefly reported on a laboratory fire, then fell silent. No follow-ups, no investigations. The incident vanished from the public record. For decades, locals spoke only in hushed tones, saying the government had erased something horrific from history. Declassified documents hint that biological research was indeed happening in Hutchinson. One file mentions neurological weapon tests aimed at inducing confusion and aggression in enemy soldiers. The documents do not mention the outbreak, but the timing matches perfectly with the so-called fire. Could it have been a coincidence? Perhaps. But conspiracy theorists argue that the United States came dangerously close to unleashing a real-life zombie infection. Rabies-like symptoms, uncontrollable rage, and violent biting are consistent with accounts of the infected, if even part of the witness testimony is true. The Hutchinson facility may have been the site of America's own zombie experiment gone wrong. In the years that followed, rumors grew stronger. Soldiers stationed nearby told their families about sudden lockdowns and mass burnings. One nurse claimed she was forced to inject sedatives into thrashing patients who screamed like animals. Others say they saw human-shaped figures strapped to gurneys, writhing violently before being wheeled into restricted areas, never to return. The government, of course, denies everything. To this day, the official record states only that a minor laboratory accident occurred, resulting in fatalities. No biological outbreak, no violent behavior, no walking dead. Just a fire. But why seal the files? Why silence witnesses? Why forbid families from seeing the bodies? Imagine living in Hutchinson in 1967. You hear sirens in the night, see military trucks blocking roads, and smell burning flesh from the distance. Then within days, the story is gone. Would you believe you had witnessed nothing but a simple fire? Or would you suspect the truth was far more terrifying? Some believe the Hutchinson incident served as a warning inside the government. Afterward, official research on rage-inducing pathogens was scaled back, but others claim the experiments continued, simply moved to more secure facilities, buried deeper under layers of secrecy. What if those experiments never really ended? What if the government perfected what Hutchinson began? It's a virus that doesn't just kill, but erases humanity, leaving only violence behind. The Hutchinson incident remains an unsolved piece of Cold War history. Was it just an accident, or the closest the world has ever come to a real zombie outbreak? And the haunting question remains, if it happened once, could it happen again? These were three of the most chilling stories of secret experiments that may have brought humanity closer to a real zombie outbreak than we ever imagined. From the mind control horrors of MKULTRA, to the Soviet obsession with rabies, to the mysterious Hutchinson incident in the United States, each story leaves us with the same unsettling question. What if the line between science and nightmare has already been crossed? We may never know the full truth. But one thing is certain, history is filled with shadows, and some of them are darker than fiction itself. If you want to hear more terrifying true stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and hit the notification bell, so you'll never miss what comes next.